Hello and welcome. My name's Warren Duncan. I am facilitating today's training on connecting with your new foster child. Thank you for joining us today, but I'm going to go ahead and jump into the material right after I do some housekeeping. So today's session is being recorded for future public use. Wanted to make you aware of that. We have this content disclaimer, and this is for a way of us to model a trauma-informed practice in the virtual classroom. So we'll talk about mental health, we'll talk about trauma today. Thank you for engaging with these topics to promote and improve our community's health and well-being. So I am one of the full-time instructor at People Incorporated's Training Institute. We put this training together in partnership with Minnesota's Department of Human Services. The Training Institute provides classes related to behavioral health online, live online, and in person. Like I said before, I'm one of the full-time instructors, and I'll share just a little bit about myself so you can better understand where I come from, right? How I see things. I'm a father to two young kids. Please don't ask me how old they are because I don't know. I mean, time is moving by so fast. I consider myself a son to my mother. I'm a partner to my wife. My first role in the nonprofit sector, and I've worked in the nonprofit sector for over 20 years, but my first role was back in 1999. I worked at a youth shelter in Des Moines, Iowa, when I was in college. And that was one of the favorite jobs that I ever had. It kind of shaped what I wanted to do. Before I got that job, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had heard through a friend that they had an opening for an overnight staff, and I was like, oh, gee, this will be good. I can work at this youth shelter. Kids are sleeping. I'll do my homework and I'll get paid. So I have a little bit of extra cash. And it was a really good fit. The kids were utilizing the shelters for all sorts of reasons. Some were experiencing homelessness. They were unhoused, and so that's where they were at for a period of time. Some kids would come in there for respites from their parents. But I enjoyed it so much. I started working not just overnights and really appreciated just having the chance to interact with those kids. It really opened my perspective as far as kids can come from these different types of households in the community. Yeah, and it had me go on this profession, this path. My majority of my career has been in housing, to be more specific, permanent supportive housing, working with all kinds of households who have a long history of experiencing homelessness, being unhoused. And some of the tools that I started developing with those kids were very effective with working with these folks. And so, we had single households, we had households with children that I've worked with in the past. I call them families. Um, and Yeah, so that's where I come from. I've been one of the full-time instructors here at the Training Institute for 2 years now, and I enjoy it. What I love is that these trainings are learning opportunities. So I shared some stuff about myself with you to share my perspective. I have a lot of thoughts of the material that we're going over. But what I'd love to hear is how you see the material, right? How you can relate this material to your life, what you see of value, maybe something that you can add. And that way we create this shared learning experience. So as I go through the slides, again, I'll be talking how I see it. I'd love to hear how you see it. We're small enough that you can either unmute and say, hey, Warren, what I'll do is I will finish up what I'm saying. I'll turn it over to you, or you can type in the chat. And I'm going to be asking for a lot of interaction in chat. And again, if you can do that, it enhances the experience. So here is the course description. Connection with a child is built on bonding experiences that build trust. To understand how to forge these experiences, it is necessary to deconstruct how trust is built up and why it can be difficult for children with trauma, including insecure attachment experiences, to offer parents the quick reassurance that they feel safe, loved, and secure. For children who feel insecure and afraid, the rejection of caregivers and authority figures is often a coping mechanism to avoid the pain of rejection. This habit needs to be unwound very slowly and carefully in order to change the identity of the child from one who feels unloved to one who feels and is identified as love. So this class discusses integrating the child into the home and outlines practical strategies for connection. That's a lot, right? When we were putting together this course, we realized that in this whole track, and there's 10 different courses, that there's a lot of overlap. To get the full picture of as far as the material that we're putting out there, it's helpful to attend all the classes in the series. However, this one particular class really connects with two other classes that we've already put on and we will be putting on again, because there's just so much overlap between them. And so we tried to make each one unique, but they really fit together as a whole. Those other two classes are practical parenting and managing challenging behaviors. So like I said, they fit together very well. However, this class is still designed to stand alone as well. Our learning objectives for the roadmap that will follow, I'm going to outline some positive childhood experience research, just really touch upon that because I think it's a good direction and guidance and where we want to strive for. We're going to talk about integrating the child into the family unit. We're going to talk about listening and building trust with your child. It's not as simple as just saying, trust me. We're going to use praise and positive feedback as a tool for building trust. Then we'll talk about sharing activities with a child, doing things together. So there's a lot of objectives. I think we can fit them within our window this afternoon. Fingers are crossed. So let's jump in to the material. And I'm going to ask you just to take a couple deep breaths and slow down for a second. I know I have a lot of energy because I get so excited about this stuff, but I want you to just take some deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth, just to kind of cleanse your mental palate. And again, I want to ask you a question, and my intention is to help shift our perspective on the children in our lives, right? So think of your child. Maybe you have a new foster child in your home, or you've had a foster child, or maybe other children, foster children in your home, and just picture one of the children in your head. Imagine them as an adult. What they would look like. And they've achieved their best self, right? They reached their full potential. Who are they? Right? What kind of person do you imagine them becoming? Can you name some of those characteristics? Maybe they're self-sufficient, they're resilient, thoughtful, kind, to others. Maybe they grow up and they become a future parent. Sometimes it's easy to get stuck on the hard times, right? I imagine that many of you in the class today have faced challenging behavior with kids, right? That's part of the work that we're doing, right? Maybe some of those kids are really tough cookies. They've been in the system, maybe they had a couple of different placements. Maybe in their life they've been going in and out of different types of crisis situations, often facing adversity, right? Chaos. And that can create challenges when we're trying to connect. Maybe the child in your home or that you're thinking of is part of a marginalized group. Despite the challenges that we're encountering, we want what is best for them, right? That's the goal. We're with these kids, we're raising these kids, we want them to grow up to be good people. And I am going to guess, at least for myself, I don't think about that every day, right? When I'm in the nitty gritty, I wonder if some of you kind of same thing. So that's why I'm taking some time now to highlight it. It is within our kids to be resilient in tough situations. If I can utilize my behavioral health background, the kids we're working with are survivors, right? They're here, they're showing up, and it's within them to keep surviving. And we can shape that so that they can reach them best selves, so that they can adapt to challenges using healthy coping mechanisms, right? And take that with them into adulthood. That's part of what we're doing. We're fostering that. And we can do that with a solid connection. So I think this is a really good roadmap for us to use. These are positive childhood experiences, right? When children experience these things, they tend to be more resilient in adulthood. There's evidence, right, that backs up that statement. Feel free to put positive childhood experiences in Google, and it's going to bring you to as far as different papers looking at it, right? Children are less likely to feel those health effects of trauma when these 7 things are happening in their life. So as we go through the training, I want us to really highlight creating these experiences for children, right? When we're integrating them into our household or continuing to integrate them, right? Continuing to foster that integration into the household. These are the kinds of things we're looking to create. These moments, these opportunities. And when we can invest in making these moments happen, that's going to pay off for how you visioned your child to be in adulthood. So we're talking about able to talk to family about feelings. Family stood by you during hard times. Participated in community traditions. Felt a sense of belonging in high school. Oh, that's a hard one, or at least from my experience, right? Felt supported by friends. 2 adults, not parents, who took interest in you. Felt safe, protected by an adult or adults in the home. So these are positive childhood experiences. Now, this is a different list from the list of protective factors that we had in our trauma class. In our trauma class, we had a list of 9 protective factors. That's not this list. It's a similar outcome. It's a different path there. Both are very valuable for you. Now, the difference here is these are positive childhood experiences. So these are the good times. These are the sunny days, right? That you spend at the park and the beach, right? Those sunny days build our resilience. They give us a buffer from the effects of adversity, from the effects of our stress response system constantly firing over and over again. And trauma, a definition that I use is a short one. It's when you face a threat or a perceived threat that overwhelms your ability to cope. It sticks with you. It changes you, changes how you view the world, right? These positive experiences remind you that the world's still a good place. I may face tough situations, but overall, right, there's good in the world. The protective factors, that other list, those are more like an umbrella, right, for when it's a rainy day to help protect you, if that makes sense. As I look at both these lists, think about that impact. That's how I see it. So experiencing these positive events helps someone get to be their best self. Check out this last one. And again, I'm going to bring us back to our trauma class just for a little bit. Attachment. Felt safe, protected by adult in home. When we don't feel safe in our home, that can create barriers. And I'm just talking about the perception of feeling safe, right? That's the thing with trauma. That's why it's different for everyone. Like when you face that threat, if you perceive it as a threat, our bodies respond to it like it's a real threat. So it's all about perception. And so that's what we're working to overcome. That's the basis for connecting. Makes sense? Any thoughts? Anything I can clarify before we move on? Feel free to type in the chat thoughts or questions that you have as we go along. Again, like I love when this is interactive. There's a lot of value here. I'm going to be asking for your input as we go through. So we're integrating the child into the household, right? That's a priority, right? I'm going to tell you some things that you probably already know, right? You need to sacrifice when we become caregivers, right? You have to make adjustments as a caregiver. Can't just spend your money on something that you like, right? You have a list of household expenses. And sometimes those things take priority over your interest. And you know what? I'm not just talking about like money or finances either. I'm talking about your time, maybe your preferences, other resources. Share something with you. I love film. I love the stories told in film. I find it's fascinating. I love the medium and how it can express the human condition. Powerful films like The Color Purple, Schindler's List, they teach us lessons in life. One of my favorite films of all time, maybe my favorite, I revisit regularly because to me, it's inspirational. It's Rocky III. It's a masterpiece. I know some of you might be looking at the camera funny, right? I grew up in a working class Italian American community. I went to a Catholic school. Everyone was Italian but me. I was the only Mexican. It was the 80s and 90s, and it was it was very Rocky centric. Love the film. My family, not a fan of Rocky. I know when my kids were younger during family movie night, I wouldn't even consider Rocky 3 as a choice because I didn't feel it was appropriate for them. In that case, I put their interest ahead of mine, right? Many times when we're watching movies or shows, I didn't even really see some films I was interested until a lot later because I didn't have the capacity or the time. When I did choose to do screen time with my kids, I gave them the choice, making sure it was right for them. So in our households, we just have to be mindful of our budgets. And again, not just the finances when I'm saying budgets, but mindful of all the resources we have, right? Time, money, etc. It's not just about the individual. It's about supporting each other, being part of a unit, right? The family unit. Now, I still, like, my brother who doesn't have kids will ask me, hey, why don't you just watch this before you go to bed at night? You know, when they go to bed, you can, catch up on that new Marvel movie that came out. And it's like, I want to, but for me, I also need my sleep so that I can be my best self. I intentionally choose to miss out on some things at the moment. Don't worry, I'll get to all those Marvel films, right? I'll catch up on the new Star Wars TV show one day. But because I recognize my capacity is limited, I remind myself that I'm making a choice for my family. And again, stuff that you already know, right? My plan is to intentionally see if I can't create some of these positive experiences, which will help my kids be their best self. Again, things are going to be different, right? New family member comes into the family, they're adding to the dynamics of the family members. Things are different for everyone. If you have a partner in the household, different for them too. If you have other children in the household, every family member needs to adjust. And so it's paying attention to that, not just for the new child coming in, though it's a major adjustment for them. Maybe we're trying to do things for us to get to know each other better. Imagine as far as a new child coming into the household, their favorite stones, little things that, some of us, I'll just speak for myself, I may not think about initially, like, where's the silverware? Where are the bowls in the cupboards? It's easy for the folks that are living there to know where that's at, but what's that like when you're coming in, trying to figure that out? Who are these folks? How do I interact with them? All those unknowns can be really scary. They may be thinking, I'm not sure what to do. I don't know if I can trust what you say. I don't know you. There might be confusion. We want to avoid confusion. What's helpful, I'd be curious to hear your perspective in the class, is to avoid confusion. We talk about keeping the inner circle small, meaning that we help the child just to know who the family members are in the family. So doing activities, meals, household routines, just with the immediate family, right? That inner circle is what I'm talking about. Sometimes we want to be mindful if we have friends that are over or extended family coming over from spending too much time right away until the child can adjust and know like, who are the caregivers, who are the members. So again, all part of integrating. Thoughts on that? And again, use the chat, or if you want to unmute with the hey Warren. So we're going to talk a little bit about emotional interdependence, and again, how it relates to integrating the child coming in. Like, we're all connected. Someone who's experienced consistency is key. It goes back to safety. Josephina, thank you. Yes, right? It's all about safety. Trauma can impact our moods. It can also impact our perception. Your big feelings, your tone, responses, they impact others in the household. So there's this term, emotional interdependence, that we have here. That just means that the feelings of one person are related to the feelings of another person. In close relationships, like families, right? One person's mood may influence the dynamics of everyone. Emotions are contagious. Do you believe that? I mean, think about it. Are they contagious? There's this term, emotional contagion, right? Think about it. When you walk up to a group of friends and they're laughing, but you haven't heard the joke, what do you tend to do? Laugh, right? Right? And hopefully the joke's not about you. Or think of you're looking at a little baby, right? And the little baby looks up at you and it smiles. What do you tend to do? Smile back, right? I mean, unless you're some kind of a monster, you're going to smile back. So it's very easy for us to react in a situation. Maybe we use a stern voice, right? And we're doing that out of habit, or we're starting to lose our patience with the situation. Pay attention to that. Watch out. How you approach a situation could escalate it, which gets in the way of connecting. How you talk to others or talk about others, pay attention to that. You're being watched. Kids are looking at you for a sense of safety. You're their rock of stability. The message that we want to give them is that we got this. We're protecting them. This household is safe, right? And like Josephina said, consistency, that's a key part of that. And the other thing I want to acknowledge, and again, I feel that you already know this, but bringing it out, is it's so easy to say this stuff in the classroom, a little harder to put into practice, right? When we're in our homes, when we're doing the work, when we're parenting. Talking about this, setting our intention to model our behaviors increases our chances of being able to do this. Oftentimes, when I'm feeling big emotions, I'll take a timeout. I'll remove myself or put some space in the situation. And again, not as a bad thing, but a way to kind of model how do we put space in things. A way to acknowledge is that sometimes we all have big feelings, right? That's normal. It's the feelings aren't bad. It's the choices that we make based on there. Can we respond rather than react? And a valuable tool for kids, we talk more about this in practical parenting, is just paying attention to how they're feeling, right? Maybe discerning or figuring out when do they need to put space in a situation because they might be feeling reactive, and coming back to it when they can better respond. That makes sense. And that's all related to how can we best connect, right? Consistency of parents, how we talk to each other, the predictability of our response, how we resolve conflict, how do we interact, right? It's important for us to have some healthy routines. That helps us shape children to have good habits. There's opportunities for them to recognize that they can have a sense of agency over their lives, meaning that they can make choices for themselves, have a sense of control. I read an article a while back that talked about the voice that we talk to kids as they grow up becomes the voice in their head as an adult. Think about that. If we're hard on kids, right? And I know we want to help them just kind of move along or to get along. That voice stays with them. It becomes their self-talk as an adult. How helpful is that if the voice, excuse me, they perceive it as overly critical or overly shaming? So again, being thoughtful, not just in what we're saying, but how we're saying. How does the child know that they're safe? Can you just tell them, hey, it's safe here, right? Will that alone give them a sense of safety? Some of you are probably smiling. I imagine there are some heads nodding. I don't think so, right? You have to show that. How do we do that? So safety, what does it mean? Safety means you won't get hurt here. This place is not a threat to you, right? That's so crucial for a child to have a home base where they can come back to from the challenges of the world. Safety means protection from violence, protection from physical abuse, emotional abuse, right? Emotional safety, right? Dig into that a little bit more. That means that people trust each other. People give each other the benefit of the doubt in questionable situations. When somebody perceives trauma or they have the experience of trauma, that involves a complete breakdown in feelings of safety. So that's what we're looking to build up. What we want is for the child to know what to expect, how things work in the home, right? With the caregivers, with the other children. We could do that with healthy routines. And this is something we talked a little bit more about in environmental assessments. But we talk about routines help with trauma because they provide that sense of safety and predictability. I think of trauma often as when you have that, not that sense of predictability. What is that? Chaos. So what's our routine like in the morning, the evening, dinner time, bedtime, right? In the morning, maybe Tomas gets up at 6 o'clock, right? The parent in the situation. Johnny, maybe they don't get up until 6:30, right? Johnny kind of gets an hour to himself. There's a routine, maybe going to the bathroom, right? Maybe Tomas or whoever is fixing breakfast, getting ready. We leave the school at 8. Same thing kind of for bedtime. It's just that type of consistency. And I know that's so easy for me to say here, and it's not always that way, but we try. So again, the predictable routines. And think of your routines. What they look like, or there are routines that are there. Are they as far as hitting the mark for you, as far as with that predictability? And all that's going to lead to trust. And just like safety, you can't tell someone to trust you. So how do we build trust? And again, it's not telling someone, hey, kid, trust me, right? Nah, that's not how it works. You got to earn trust. So how do we do that? I have this metaphor here. It's called a trust jar, right? It's such a cool way to show how trust is built slowly over time in the small moments. I first learned of this through a book called Dare to Lead by Brene Brown. She's one of my favorite authors, just working in the behavioral health field. being in past positions of leadership. I found a lot of kind of guidance through her books. I can't recommend them enough. But in the book, she talks about a trust jar, and she talks about a difficult situation her daughter experienced, and some of the daughter's friends shared a private bit of information, and she just talks with the whole class, so everyone knew this private thing and just how much it impacted her. And I didn't even have to know what that private thing was to kind of figure knowing kind of that sense of betrayal. And so, here we have the metaphor of the trust jar being built by small things that you're doing, you're listening, you're not coming down on someone when maybe they share a situation they're experiencing. When these things happen, they're little bits of information. You're putting a little marble in the jar. And over time, the jar fills up. And when it's full, that's when you trust with someone. But there are also moments that can build distrust, right? What are those like? Like maybe going back on your word, shaming a decision that a child made, even though you're saying what you're saying because you want to make them better, they perceive that as shaming. When that happens, marbles come out of the jar. And depending on the situation, but more times than not, more marbles are taken out when there's distrust. It's easier to lose marbles than to get marbles. Again, stuff any of you are aware of, right? When we can build trust, that's going to help us influence people. So we build trust just through our actions. And again, here are some ways that we can fill the jar for our children, metaphorically, right? Listening, encouragement, doing what we say. I said some of these in the picture here. Staying calm in stressful moments, right? Not flipping our lid. It's cool, like, Brene Brown talks about the classroom doing it. Since looking into it, a number of classrooms do this as to build on that concept of trust taking time, that psychological safety taking time. It's a really cool way to show that. I imagine we could probably do it in our homes. If we're talking about trust, might be a great way to bring up the topic, throw it out there right away. If you do that, be careful not to like remove marbles as punishment. Think of it in like it's a compliance tool. That's not that, right? All that does is shame or can humiliate the kid. But it might be a great way to demonstrate what are healthy actions and unhealthy actions as we're building trust. Any other ideas? I have ways to build trust. I feel this list is kind of thin. What are some things that you've seen that help build trust in your family? Feel free to unmute too. If that's easier than typing, let's do it. Not everybody all at once, though. Think about it, right? What do you do to build trust? This concept may be new to you, but the jar bit may be new to you, but I think like the basics of the content, I know, I just got to kind of think about it. And I'm encouraging you as far as to think about it, to think about, okay, I'm going to be more intentional about this. And that's going to help you connect, right? When we can be more intentional rather than just letting it happen organically, which I'm positive that it does, that there are moments like this. But when we can pay attention, be a bit more present about this, we can make sure those opportunities happen more. Now, here I have listening. I want to go over a little bit of this tool in the behavioral health world, active listening. Um, you know, this is something that helps demonstrate to the child that they matter. It shows that they matter. When we can pay attention to them, be focused on them, and I'll explain a little bit more in this technique, but when we're talking to them, we want to hear kind of what they're saying, right? And not just the words, but kind of that meaning. What's important to them may seem kind of trivial to you, but let them talk about that. Be curious about that. And it may be so trivial. I think of in my family, one of my daughters is really into this game, Roblox. It's strange to me, but it's something that she's interested in. And so I use that as a way to hear that. And that's a foot in the door to connect to some other things that I feel may really matter. But it's being there to hear that. I think of as far as like, I was raised by my mom and my grandma was like a second mother to me. And I think of like, we go back to those positive childhood experiences. But I remember I talked to my grandma about everything. I was like, oh man, does she really care about like Macho Man Randy Savage and like Hulk Hogan? I loved wrestling as a kid, but like, I wonder how much that really mattered to her. But she took that time. Same thing here. When they share something that's important or a difficult situation, when we're paying attention to that, we can maybe help them identify what they might be feeling. If they talk about a really tough time at school, they're encountering something, we can help use like an active listening technique just where we kind of paraphrase back to them what we think they mean or how that might have felt to us. And I have some examples here as far as like, I bet that was really scary for you, or it sounds like you might be upset about what Doug said on the bus. Remember, kids are developing and I'm really, this is a tool for all age groups. One of the things that have been my experience in working with people and children who have experienced trauma is that sometimes there can be a delay in emotional intelligence, or just really kind of identifying what's going on. We talk more about this in some of our other classes, but when we can paraphrase that, we can help label it. It helps the child kind of start understanding, oh, what am I feeling here, right? I'm not just feeling mad, but there might be a little bit more nuance to that feeling. Maybe it's shame or humiliation or frustration, whatever. And so again, when we kind of paraphrase what that might feel like or what they might be thinking as they talk, that helps them as far as feel heard, but better understand the experience as they process it. And it's such a valuable tool, just paraphrasing with active listening. And we can use it to follow up as far as with other statements that might promote some insight into the situation. So here, if it was a benign kind of topic of conversation, you can say, hey, what are some of the other games you like to play? Right? If it's just all about Roblox, like what are some of the other things that interest you? Or if it was a tough situation, maybe start planting the seeds of as far as how do you think Doug saw the situation? How else could Doug have done that differently? And again, this is a tool and it's so brief. It's such a valuable tool. We talk a little bit about it in a lot of these different sessions, but it's like counselors and therapists use this kind of tool all the time in their therapeutic setting, in their clinical setting, but it's not just limited there. So I tell you that not to scare you off, but to show you the value of connecting. But when you can just say back what you think you hear to a child, that lets them know that they've been heard. That's probably one of the best tools that you can have. And again, I imagine many of you are aware of this already, or maybe you do it, but I never really thought of that as active listening or reflective listening, just paying attention to them. Here I have Gottman's 5-to-1 rule. We tend to be stuck on the things that don't go well. We pay more attention to things that don't go well than things that go well. So, share a personal experience that I had in school between two teachers. I went to a parochial high school. I had two different teachers in Catholic faith. Both teachers were priests. They had very similar perspectives in life. However, they had very different styles of teaching. Father Dorton and Father O'Brien, right? Father Dorton was old school. He was strict. He was often punitive. Father O'Brien, he was really warm and positive. Father O'Brien, he used the soft skills. He'd smile. He'd ask the class, just each of us individually, what was going on in our life, stuff like that, stuff that we were interested in. And he remembered. If you followed a team, he'd bring that up. Or if you had something going on in your life, he'd ask, hey, how did that go? And it's like, oh, I really enjoyed being in the class. I also remember like some of the stuff that he taught. Father Dorton's class, I don't remember a thing. All I remember is he was mean. And so think about that. We have this negativity bias where we can be stuck on the negative. We see the negative more. We hear the negative more. We remember the negative more, to this ratio of 5-to-1. So think about child wakes up late. We're rushing them to school. We're hurrying them to get to school. Maybe they miss out on breakfast. Like, that's a really rough start to the day. And we're hollering all the way along. They have to have 5 positive experiences to counter that one, I'm late to school. I'm being hollered at and rushed to school. And so at the end of the day, right, people remember how you made them feel. Keep that in mind. And I don't want to say, oh, you can't ever holler. But what I'm trying to throw out here is, as far as how will that make someone feel? Does that get in the way of connecting? So I want to talk about using praise when we can. And so when we're just in life in general, what can we praise? And then we want to praise it often. Now, praise, I'm not saying cheerlead. Cheerlead, I think of as like BS, like rah, 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 right? You know what I mean? You can do it. I'm not saying that. That's empty. But what I'm talking about with praise is being specific, right? You did a good job on such and such. Way to go. A fist bump. Looking at things that they've done, certain behaviors. And you want to do it often, but you want to do it right after the behavior. You want to name the action being praised, right? Good job doing those dishes. Oh, I love that you jumped in and folded the laundry right away. Right on. Or, wow, fantastic job doing your homework. Love that you in there. Right? This we want to do all the time. We also want to pair it with feedback. this can be a really helpful tool. Now, this model, believe it or not, I got from the Harvard Business Review. And I used it quite a bit in leadership positions when I was in a director position managing a group of staff. However, I found with some modifications that it's a really great parenting tool as well. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and feel free to push back, share your perspective if you see it differently. But I find feedback can be given just around anything. We're talking about doing chores or doing things that need to be done, behaviors, you name it. And this is something that works with older children, helps them start feeling or making those connections, having a sense of ownership over themselves. And the key to it is, here it's step number 1, ask if you can give feedback. The key to it is really connecting. We want to connect with them to make sure that they're receptive before we redirect. And so sometimes I've talked to folks about this and they get stuck on asking for feedback. Oh, I don't want to ask the question. So it's just about making sure that who you're talking to is receptive. It doesn't necessarily have to be a question that you ask. It can be an icon. It can be eye contact. It can be big hug. I found that the phrase, hey, can I tell you something? Hey, can I share something with you? After a big hug, usually gets a yes, right? A little nod at the very least. And here we can pair this with, we describe the behavior, describe the effect it has. So what are they doing? How is it impacting the household? And it can be done either for things that are positive, we want them to keep doing, or things that we want them to change. Here I have negative, but it's just doing it a different way, I think is more accurate. And we want to reinforce what they're doing right as much as we can. Slightly different than praise, right? But when we see something they're doing, we want to do this. And then we thank them, we tell them to keep it up. If it's something we need to change, here it's asking, how can we do that differently? Reinforcing their good ideas, offering suggestions when we're not hearing something that fit the mark. And again, if we have that connection, here we're engaged in a cooperative conversation. In managing childhood behaviors, we have our challenging behaviors. We talk about the strategy of we want to connect before we redirect. That's what we're talking about here. We want to connect, and then how do we change the behavior? Having a conversation about that. And this allows for a really, especially with older kids, good conversation to kind of spark that insight into how a kid sees the world. And it's all about that receptivity and cooperation. So an example of positive can be, hey, Fiona, can I tell you something? When you get up right away and you start to get ready for school, it makes the morning run smoothly. Thank you. Keep it up. So that's something I want her to keep doing. Something to change. I could say the same thing. Hey, Fiona, can I tell you something? When you stay in bed that extra 10 minutes, not a lot of time to eat breakfast, right? Is there, and to get going for school, can we do it differently? Or we need to figure out a plan to make sure you get enough sleep. What does that look like? Hey, Charlie, can I share something important with you? When you take the garbage out without having to be told, it's so helpful. Thank you. Keep it up. The other side of that coin. Hey, Charlie, can I share something with you? I just lost my place. Hold on. I wrote some of these down to make sure that you can kind of hear it. Hey, Charlie, can I share something important with you, right? When it's our job to empty the garbage and it's not done, the trash piles up and it's really hard for us to clean up after dinner right away because there's nowhere to put the scraps. How can we keep the trash from overflowing? What can we do differently to help you stay on top of this? So again, just some examples. The more you do this, the more it starts to just become natural. Some suggestions that can be paired with giving feedback. Sometimes you offer a mulligan or a do-over, or maybe you practice the new behavior or the how do you do the situation again, like doing it together. Role play. I found role play great when we can engage and we're talking about some tough situations that kids have been in. Thoughts? Reactions? You know, it's a lot to process. I'm throwing so much information at you. You know, we talk about praise or talk about the good behavior again. It's what we want them to keep doing. Maybe it's using the polite words. Maybe it's asking for help or approaching you with a sensitive situation that demonstrates their trust, or how they handled a tough moment. Maybe there was a challenging situation at school and they didn't want to face it, but they showed up. That's good to give praise, to give positive feedback. Any thoughts, reactions? I'm going to put up a scenario. And I want to hear as far as your thoughts. It's morning. We're getting ready for the day. Before you go to work, you need to drop your kids off at school. You notice one of them is not getting ready and you really need to leave. What do you do? How do you respond to the situation? And again, as far as think of the tools that we talked about, praise and feedback. How would you approach that situation? Maybe we can start with a quick, what might make the situation worse? Ask if something's wrong. Oh, I like that. Hey, I notice as far as that you're not getting ready. Is there something going on? Oh, I love that. Anything I can do to help? Yeah, I love that. You're going right towards understanding, right? Is there something that's getting in the way? Chances are there might be, and there might be some reluctance to talk about that. I really like that. Any other thoughts? It's particularly with like practicing praise or feedback, though, you don't have to. It's as far as kind of how can we best respond, thinking about making a connection. I'm willing to bet all of us have been here. I'd like a cookie now, please. I love that. That's great. All I have are figurative cookies to give you. I don't have any real cookies. Um, yeah, when I look at this, the thing I want us to be aware of is as far as like, it's so easy to say, hurry up, get going. And again, like, yeah, I think it's natural to have that. And in some sense, if a lot of trust is there, there might not be a lot of harm in this, right? It's hard to be kind of consistent, but when we can pause and think about how it might be more connecting, there might be a better way to address it. So that's why I dig talking about like, oh, there's something getting in the way. So I need to figure out what's getting in the way. When I do feedback, I talked about big morning hug, such a great way to connect with kids. I love being a little silly. I like to do this thing with my kids, both of them, and they still dig it, even though they're getting older, right? That I call a super hug. Tell them I love them so much. Usually, most of the time, that produces a smile. Hey, now I have a connection. From there, I can go to, hey, we got to leave in 10 minutes. So we need to be dressed. We need to eat. We need to be out the door. And I've seen you get dressed that quickly. I know you can do it. Thank you. And kind of move on. I found that to be a very helpful strategy. The other thing is knowing there might not be enough time for them to eat. So I have I have snacks and food in the car. And so I'm prepared if there isn't enough time for breakfast because I've put stuff together. That might be part of the plan. And here, and especially when we're working on routines, like if we can get this in a routine so they know when it's time to leave, maybe the conversation is as far as like, how much sleep do we need? Oh, sounds like you're really tired. You might not be getting enough sleep. And again, if we're in a conversation, those are a way to kind of reflect what might be going on. So we're asking those great questions. Is there something wrong? Is there everything I can do to help? Maybe it's not an incident at school. Maybe it's just like I'm having a really hard time getting up, or I didn't know what kind of clothes to pick for today, and I didn't have anything done. Oh, okay. And then we can have start going forward. What can we do? Right. And you see the conversations being led to, well, maybe we pick out clothes the night before so that we know what to do. And that's going to make getting ready that much quicker. And again, they start building a habit. We praise them when they do that. And that's just subtle ways that we can empower. I have a friend, I want to share this story with you. When I was putting this together, kind of getting feedback on situations, they play music in the morning to get everyone going. I think that's such a cool thing to do. Like, for me, music is a great natural way to kind of shift my mood and my motivation. So it totally makes sense that it would work with kids where, they start and the volume's low and they turn it up a little louder to help get the child up and out of bed. You do that for your kiddos. Nice, right? They do like I'd love to hear like what songs that you're playing. They do like stuff like Dancing Queen by ABBA, Duke of Earl, like which Duke of Earl. I don't know. It's an older song. I don't know if you guys do it. That's but like to me, I think that's, well, what a way to make it fun. What a way for a little laughter and a little smile. And again, it's just an alternative to, hey, get up, we gotta go. Come on, can't be late. And I say that, and it's like, sometimes I fall into that trap. And again, when we have plans like this, that's gonna help us. Got a couple more. I want to kind of pick things that are helpful for us. I don't know if we're going to have, this is a good one, time for all of them, but I really like to hear your thoughts, right? And I'll share mine with you too. But remember, my perspective isn't like a silver bullet solution, right? Situations, life's complex. Sherry, my kids have severe behavior, mental health, DD, so I play all meditation music and Native American flute music. Oh, I love that. Well, and I think too, as far as, with like behavior issues or issues around behavior or like mental wellness, yeah, absolutely. You know what I mean? As far as ways to manage that. But as far as, then they start having coping skills going forward. I love that. And those are big challenges. So here we have during dinner, crisis and respite. To help bring balance. Yeah. So during dinner, your child pulls out a screen and starts using it while the rest of the family is talking about your day. Remember, our goal here is to connect. Sometimes there might have to be a little bit of redirection too. So how do we best do that? What makes it worse is if we said, "Hey, that's not the time and place for it," right? If we said it like that, it's probably not going to be received very well. And so, what's a way for us to respond? And I'm curious, what would you do? Just thinking about the connection. Engage with them, yeah, about themselves. I like that. I mean, there's a way too to, oh, maybe the message with pulling out the screen is that they're feeling a little disconnected and looking for a way to entertain themselves. What's a better way is engaging. Yeah. A question about the day. Yeah. Hey, Charlie, how did school go today? How did the test? I think that's great. There could be a thing where we want to say what we want to do, right? What we want to happen instead of putting away. It could just be, hey, it's time to connect with you to hear about all the things that you've done. What happened with your day, right? And that might be enough. And again, I throw this out here as far as for a way to say, what are the different ways that we can accomplish parenting, right? While looking at fostering that connection. Any other thoughts? Something that you do differently that we didn't get to? They'd be like, hey, Warren, what about this? All right, let's get into sharing activities. Um, when we're doing stuff together, always think about praise and feedback, right? And again, do I need to do that exact kind of method? Nah, it's the intention of, hey, I want to understand, especially if you're doing praise, fist bump hubs, way to go, you did such and such, and just making a mental note to point it out. So, why is bonding important, right? They're starting to get attention for good behavior, lets the child know that they're loved, helps them feel good. Children love attention and will misbehave for attention, right? When they're good, from their perspective, sometimes they don't get the attention. It's that old squeaky wheel, right? If dealing with misbehaviors, that can impact the relationship. So bonding is time where we can have time together that's conflict free. I mean, bonding is such a great way to get ahead of the behaviors, building that parental rapport. But it does take effort, it does take time. For me, the challenge is I got to plan a lot of that. And sometimes I have to make time for it. I have to prioritize to make sure that this doesn't get missed. So I try to find things that I can do every day. And when I notice like that's not happening, that's when I get very intentional about doing it. Sometimes I make it formal. I'd be like, hey, Fiona, we haven't really had much time to connect. Would you like to a little date on, tomorrow evening? Or, would you like to do such and such? So I make it kind of a plan. Other times I'll plan it in my head, but I'll make it more spontaneous. I'd be like, hey, Charlie, you want to go to a fun place right now? And usually, it's like going to the park or going out and playing cats or whatever. And it's like, yeah. And so again, just thinking about what does that look like? And when you're looking to find bonding time, try to give the child a choice. When we think of like often when things are perceived as traumatic in the event, the person didn't feel like they had control or choice. And so when we can provide that choice, it's very empowering. It's a subtle way to say, hey, what you like is important, which means you're important. You matter to me, right? Um, Put on our positive hat. It's easier said than that. This is for me, and I'm not telling you to be Warren, but like this has been a very useful tool just because naturally I'm gregarious, and so try to be positive, but you don't have to be like a cartoon character. Um, but as far as like making it fun, and again, we think about that emotional contagion that's going to carry over. Ooh, it's going to be great, right? Little stuff like that, if it's ingrained, and again, it doesn't have to sound exactly like me, but that's going to help as far as to say, oh, this is a good thing. Can we make it interactive? Can we make it a way for we're engaging? Even if it's something like passive, where we're watching a TV show together. Is there a way to make it interactive? Maybe you talk about that TV show. Start looking for opportunities. Maybe you're building rapport with just riding in the car together, right? That could be an opportunity just to kind of chat, listen to music. It's really easy too. When I think of the car ride, just for someone not to have any fun and be like, oh, Jimmy hates car rides. And it's just like, well, that might be a one-time thing, or it worked out really well one time, and for whatever reason, your child's not feeling it this time. You don't have to despair. Like that type of stuff is natural. But again, always look for those opportunities. If it can be somewhere around your local community. I'm lucky enough right by my house is a park, so we can go there, play catch. My oldest daughter plays softball. My youngest daughter, she doesn't play, but she does have her own glove and she does like doing it. Throw around a football, Nerf football. They love that. Maybe it's reading at night, right? So whatever it is, and then it's all about keeping at it. Um, Thinking local, getting the child into the community, maybe a community event. Remember those positive childhood experiences. That can be a great opportunity. You guys have fun together. Maybe it's something that relates to shared culture, and that doesn't necessarily have to be around like our ethnicity or our race, but it could be around kind of like a sports team, like a local school team, or it could be around a community festival, like a fall festival or a summer festival. I have pleasant memories of going with my stepdad and stepbrother to the John Deere plants. They would have a community day every summer, and we always went. My stepdad, he worked at John Deere. He retired. He worked on the line. He built cotton pickers, which is in their plant in their Ankeny, Iowa plant. And it was just a lot of fun to go there. But the whole community came around John Deere plant because at the time, like that was a major source of jobs. The Ankeny was a lot smaller back then. Now everything's exploded and big, but they still have it. Last summer, I went with my stepbrother and his kids and my kids and stepdad, and it was a lot of fun. It reminded me, I felt a lot of like of those great moments I had, but it was neat to see. And my stepdad doesn't even work at John Deere anymore. Like he retired years ago. Um, but just that it was a great way for us to connect. It was just kind of a neat bonding experience. And so think about like those kind of opportunities in your life. What are they? Talk about conversation. And again, we've been talking about this already, but making sure that we're talking to our kids and it's just a regular part of the routine. Like we talk at dinner, we ask how the day goes. We're modeling how we treat each other. And again, it takes time. There might be a delay. It might be new, especially if the child's a little bit older. They're coming into the household. They're still trying to figure things out. Why are you asking me all these questions? Or as children get older, there's this tendency to want to pull away from caregivers and parents and fit in with their friends, recognizing that. And so again, as the being has, this is our strategy for engagement. Open-ended questions rather than closed-ended questions. So an open-ended question is something to keep somebody talking. Oftentimes with a closed-ended question, it's a yes or no answer. It's hard to have conversations with yes or no. It feels kind of weird if someone keeps asking you yes or no questions. Bringing up what's going on in their life, or if they mention something, hey, how'd that test go? Or, oh, you were so excited about like this type of thing. How did it go? Or I noticed you're reading a new book. How did that end? Let's not forget how good these teenagers are in asking us questions. Absolutely share. And that's a great point. It works both ways. I think I was getting at just as far as engaging with the child, but if they're asking us questions, whoo, that's some gold for relationship building. Just sharing, having a good time, common interests. And then there's this gamification, make it playful. So here, it's like a little bit of a game, high-low. Each member of the family takes turns sharing the high moments and low moments of the day. A great one to do at dinner, like a little activity. Couple others that you might look at. I know I'm starting to run low on time. But two truths and a lie. I love that. I started it when my kids were just starting grade school. A lot of times I'd have the opportunity to pick them up at school. And with my oldest, especially, like I'd say, hey, how'd your day go? Fine. It's just it's so cute, right? But it's like this was a way to pull a little bit more information. So you ask the child to tell you three things that happened in the day, right? Two of the things happened. One of those things is false. We try to guess which one is false. So I've had great success, not just with my kids, but with my niece and my nephew, and then my other set of nephews. It's been a lot of fun. And I find out a lot of stuff. Another one for engagement that we do, thinking of an animal, right? Member of the family thinks of an animal. The other family members try to guess. Slowly, clues are given until the family can guess. That's always a lot of fun. Talking while you're playing. Yeah, for that, we do a lot of, especially with my youngest, board games and cards. Uno's huge. Much fun, but it's a chance for us to have a conversation. And that was something I learned when I worked at the youth shelter. I played this game called Phase 10. And it's just like, it was a way to have a conversation. And we just naturally talk. Oh, you love Uno too? Yeah, it's an older game. It's been around, but it hits the mark. Playing catch together, right? Just whatever it is, talking about playing. Curious as far as like from some of y'all too, like what are games that you play or tips for engagement and bonding? Simon, another one. Oh, I remember that one. Chess, very cool. That's a neat one too, because I guess with Uno, but there's a lot of just thinking ahead. Yeah, that's kind of building as far as like that upstairs part of the brain, which is neat. Basketball, walks, huge. Oh yeah, I like that, especially if there's a pet involved, because now there's this sense of responsibility. Oh, we got to take the pet out for a walk. Usually it's dogs, right? Bike riding, I love it. So again, errands. And you might think too, boy, my child's getting too old for these. And it's like, I don't necessarily know if that's the case. Don't let that be a barrier. Again, like sometimes there's a delay in the development, but sometimes, even if there's not a delay in the development, kids just like it. And so if you can find that opportunity, do it. Like errands, groceries, small bits. So we have that bike riding, cooking a meal, baking a treat, just something to do together. And again, I'd love to keep seeing as far as in the chat, or if you want to unmute, what you're doing together. PS5, but time is limited on it. Nice. That, I think of sacrifice that I made. I used to play a lot more PlayStation before the girls came into my life. But I like that. Time's limited. It's the same for us, for I think of like the different games in Roblox. Like, we got to keep that limited. So again, but that's part of boundaries, which we talk about in other classes. So moving on to like focusing on community traditions. And again, I've said some of these before, but these are great opportunities just to be out together, to do things together. And again, like find what's in your community. Some of the things that have really worked for me is that, I'll go to my nieces or nephews' sporting events and I bring my kids along as well. And it kind of models like, hey, this is a way that we support each other. I've also taken each of my girls to events of their different friends, like Irish dancing, lacrosse games, where it's like my kids aren't doing it, but their friends are doing it. So let's go and support them. My A couple years ago, my neighbor, he was captain of the high school hockey team, which was such a neat thing. We went to a couple of his home games, and it was a really fun experience. And it helped build, on a side note, just a better relationship with our neighbors too when we're doing that. But one of the things that I noticed recently is my oldest daughter plays softball, and two of her friends came to her game, which I thought was neat. And again, it's just stuff that starts rubbing off. We go to, as far as like the varsity schools basketball games or football games, just as like something to do, but it's that community involvement. And I got the idea of, I think of, when I was in high school, I had a really good experience with sports. I played football. It was a lot of fun. I remembered how much fun it was. But even when I don't know anybody, going to that community, giving the kids the sense of what's going on, is a great way to say, hey, we're a part of something. And again, it doesn't have to be like Warren Duncan. What does Warren Duncan do? But if there's something there, think about it. What can we do? We need to mix up Gen X with the new age. Nice. So look at it. Maybe it's a nonprofit fundraiser. Maybe there's a community event. But as far as what are you doing? And if, oh, I don't really know if we do anything. Maybe we go to the fair, which is awesome, right? Or maybe we do this. Cool. So but what can we do as far as for other opportunities? And as we come to the end, couple slides, want to leave you with this thought: go for a B. Right? We're gonna have good, we're gonna have bad days, there's gonna be bad moments. I'm a huge baseball fan. I view it as the game as a philosophy. I mean, for me, it's a metaphor in life, right? Sometimes we go up to bat, we strike out. sometimes it's easy to fall into a slump. That happens, right? Happens to me. Working on this project, I found a lot of great resources, things that I've incorporated into my parenting. We may make mistakes. We may find something that works one day, it doesn't work the next day. Maybe it worked for a while and then all of a sudden it stops working. And that's part of the process. It's all a practice. And I think about some of the kids in our households and the challenging situations they might come from. Like Sherry, you shared as far as like, if a child's kind of struggling with some mental health symptoms, it's tough to kind of figure that out right away. I've talked to some friends where, we came to the decision that our child's struggling with these mental health symptoms. We want to connect with some kind of a medication or something, but we're not finding the right mix. And it's kind of a struggle for that. And so we want to look at things that don't go well as learning opportunities. Like I said, it's part of the process. Beware of the all or nothing thinking. My grandma used to tell me growing up, she said this all the time. Once you think you know something, you quit learning. I think that's parenting, right? And actually, now that I say that, I mean, she might not have been talking to me. She might have been kind of having a little mantra that she said to keep her in the right mindset. But it's easy to fall into this, this didn't work, this doesn't work, or, little Johnny or little Sally, this is just who they are. That's not true, right? That's this all or nothing. That's faulty logic. Grandma used to call that stinking thinking, right? So we want to be aware that when we're under stress, we might fall into that. And that's a cognitive distortion. Pay attention. We make mistakes. It doesn't turn out as we planned. Again, it's what do we do differently next time? And going for a B, a lot of times on social media, I see parents talking about like, oh, we do this and that, like everything's perfect. And that's not real. So just pay attention. I'll close with the same slide experiences. I highlighted everything that we talked about, and I would bet that just by focusing on some of these things, the gaps that aren't highlighted would naturally fall into place with this strategy. So I want to encourage you to keep at it, but I want to thank you all for attending.